I'll go quickly through these slides. Again, some of this is going to be recorded. Hopefully other people will watch it on the YouTube channel, and these slides will be available as well. So I'll put them on the NESB page. But I wanted just to talk a little bit about the final submissions, the in-person events, and then what you're going to do for a virtual submission for the teams that are choosing to do that. And then just one slide on supplies at the end of the challenge, what happens with those. So where we are in the schedule, it feels like we've been doing this forever, and it's not so untrue, especially those of you guys that participated in the professional development. We're near the end here, so final submissions are due next week. So that's why we're given this last mission support advisor session, which is to help folks get ready for that final submission. I do want to put a note here. There is a thing in the schedule that said meet an astronaut, and I've been working that with NASA. They've got a weird, it's not weird form, but they have a form that you fill out, and then they're supposed to contact you, and they haven't been as communicative as I was hoping. So we are still trying to make that happen, but there is a possibility that that may not happen. I'll let you guys know as soon as I know, but that will be a virtual event anyhow. So hopefully, whether it happens, you know, if it does happen, it's something that students can participate in kind of at the last minute on a short notice. And I need to make sure I'm admitting people. But yeah, we're still trying to make that happen. I think that would be a really fun thing for students.
And I have a question for the Meet the NASA expert. We have missed one of those things because my team, like not everybody was, they had a school at that time.
Mm-hmm.
In the Pacific area. So what can be done, like if we don't have an opportunity? Is a YouTube video sufficient?
Yeah, so all of the NASA expert talks have been recorded, and you can just watch them on YouTube. So on our YouTube channel. Yep. And that's totally fine. And we understand that a lot of teams can't make the times that we schedule those because we've got teams all over the country. So yeah, that's totally fine for them just to watch the recording.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right, so let's go through the only other date you might want to note here. Again, there is the possibility of teams winning or being recognized with a trip to Kennedy. This is something, again, we're going to start planning as soon as we know which participants are coming, and then we'll work the dates out. But this is the window of dates where that might happen. So it will be occurring at the end of the summer if parents or students are asking about that. All right, so lots of stuff again on the website. If you're looking for certain information, a lot of what I'm talking about is already there. But the main thing here I want to note is that a submission page is open. You can just find it on the main Artemis ROADS page. And then a lot of the other information about the final events can be found under resources and of course in the challenge manual. And yeah, so a little bit on final submissions. I just want to make it clear that we really want every team that participated, if you can, to make some kind of final submission. We're not just looking for submissions from the teams that completed all of the mission objectives or even most of the mission objectives. We designed this challenge actually to allow teams to kind of participate at whatever level they could or felt comfortable with or had time for. So if you only did 2 mission objectives or 3, we'd still love to see a submission from your team, and we can still recognize the work that they did. And it also provides us with some good data and information that we can use in future programs. We can tell NASA how many teams participated in what level, but also we can look and be like, man, all the teams like did this mission objective and none of them did that one. And that's useful for us to know. Okay. And again, if you guys have questions as I'm talking, feel free to interrupt. But yeah, so if you look what's in the manual, the main thing that's in the manual about the final submission is details regarding what goes in the mission development log, or MDL. So I just wanted to remind you guys that as the teams are kind of finishing up what they did put in the MDL, we'd appreciate it if it has a title page with the team name, team members' names, and the mission patch. Although we are going to have you guys upload the mission patch separately, so maybe if it's not on there, that's not such a big deal. But the team members' names is really important because that's how we make our certificates of completion and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that's information is all available. The table of contents is really useful because we do actually read it. And so that way we can actually, look at it and get to the mission objectives more easily. And again, because we do read it, we are putting a page limit on it. So we actually can get through all of the ones that are submitted. And then this is just quick, a preview of the submission form. And these slides I'm going to go through really quickly because they're available on the website already. I know that when you're doing these long submissions, it can be frustrating, and it's nice to actually know what information you're going to be asked for. So that's why I made this little slide deck. And again, the reason why we ask for all this information is actually we are funded by NASA. So we're a federally funded program. So we do actually have to provide some participant information, not names. Everything's anonymous, but they are interested in knowing who's participating, how many students, and where they're from, and some general demographic information. So that's why we ask for it over and over again. But yeah, mission advisor information, that should just be, again, whoever's leading the team. We are asking you to upload the mission patch separately, and we ask for that because if we're making a post, a social media post, or doing something fun to recognize the team, it's really fun to do that with their mission patch. So instead of having to pull it out of the manual, it's nice to have a separate image file of it. And then just some check boxes about how they participated. And again, yeah, you can watch these on YouTube. If you didn't attend the NASA Expert Talks Live, that's totally fine. The MDL, you can either upload a file, and that can be a PDF or a Word document, is kind of the two that we prefer, or it could be a PowerPoint. Or a lot of teams use Google Docs or Google Slides. Some even make websites. So if you would rather share a URL, you can do that as well. So the option for uploading it's going to change depending on which button you click up here. If you guys have a URL, please make sure that it's shared like with us, or at least, we can view it. Last year we had a lot of teams share Google Drive things with us, but we didn't have permission to view the files. So that was a lot of back and forth to get those open. The Wing It Like Wingly submission, that's described in the manual. It's optional, so don't feel like you have to do it. If you do choose to make a submission, you've got some options about how you can upload it. This is totally optional again too, but if you want to share some images or videos of your team working, we would love to see them. We don't have a dedicated social media person right now, so we haven't been making as many posts as maybe we could, but it's potentially, we can make fun social media posts, or maybe like a trailer for the Roads Challenge with some of that information for next year. So if your team feels comfortable sharing that information and wants to, you're welcome to. If you do need to have NASA media release forms, and that just allows us to know that we have permission to use the student images. And we love, I know it sounds terrible, but we love images of the back of students' heads because, and you guys teachers probably understand that, we don't necessarily want to put a lot of faces on the internet, but we do like to see young people participate. Yeah, and then this is probably the longest part, but we do ask for team member information, just general stuff, and do the best you can in terms of filling this out. I know you might, as a teacher, not know the age of every single student and every detail, but definitely don't guess if you don't know, but yeah, do the best you can with this stuff. It's good for us to know, but it's, if we don't have the exact information, that's okay too. Mailing address, again, we will be mailing out for virtual teams certificates of completion. So make sure you give us your mailing address. And this, by the way, if you're going to be on summer break, you might want to think about where you would like it mailed. If it's going to go to the school and not go, get stuck there, then might be something to think about. And then some information about whether or not you're attending an in-person hub. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about this. If you are attending an in-person hub, just list some information about who's going. And we're going to share this with the hub so that they can better prepare and know the number of people to expect at their events. And then the last little bit here, so there's an or here. So this is if you're going to an in-person hub, you'll fill out this stuff. If you are submitting virtually, then similar to the MDL, you need to upload a file. In this case, it's going to be a video that includes your team's final challenge results. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but you should be prepared to either upload a video file, or you can upload it to YouTube or something like that. and share a link. And you can always upload things to YouTube and have it unlisted so people can't watch it. But if you share a link, then the people can watch it, and that's a good option. Yeah, and then there is an option on here if you are submitting virtually if your team wants to submit their MDL to us virtually, that's an option as well. If we have a good amount of participation on that, we'll probably just set up a scheduler, and it'll be a limited amount of time, but we can have your team log on and we'll allow them to present their MDL to us virtually so they can get that experience. One thing I want to note, I think the biggest issue we have with these submission forms is we always have a preview of the submission before you actually hit the submit button, and this allows you to see everything you wrote and change it if you need to, go back and change it. But a lot of people see this and I think they submitted the information. So note that there is a preview right at the end, but you still haven't submitted it. So go down to the bottom of the preview and make sure to still hit submit so that we don't miss that submission. You don't have to go through and do it all over again. Okay, questions on that form? Any?
No.
No? Okay, good. You guys are probably getting used to that now. So in-person hubs, again, most of the folks have seen a slide like this and should know if they are near an in-person hub, the dates and the locations of the event. So I just want to note for most hubs, we're requiring teams to reach what we call lunar orbit or lunar landing status, but there are some hubs that are just going to invite everybody. So that just look out for the email about details on that. And travel support is going to be provided for teams traveling longer distances. And again, that's hub specific. If you read that and you think like, I am not far enough away to get support, but I really don't think our team can come unless we have travel support. Again, that's something that you should definitely feel comfortable emailing your the hub director about. They've got a certain budget, and I'm sure if it's within their budget to support your team, they will accommodate you. Some questions that we've had about who can attend. If there is an approved adult to sub in for the mission advisor, that's okay. So if like you can't go, but the parent can, that's okay. And the whole team does not need to attend. So if you've got team members that have other obligations, that's okay. Is whoever can attend we'll be happy to have them. Okay, so levels of achievement, just to remind you guys, we've already done Launchpad and low Earth orbit. Lunar orbit is a final submission level of achievement. And this one, again, they're doing, let's see, a total of, so we got MO1, that's the MDL. Okay, the mission patch, that's 2. Another MO, so for Launchpad, they had 3. Low orbit, they had 4. And then it's 6 for lunar orbit. And then lunar landing is special. Those are for teams that did all of the mission objectives and watched 2 NASA expert talks. And those are the only teams that are going to be eligible to win a trip to Kennedy Space Center. Okay, so that's a little bit of incentive to do the whole thing. And we want to make sure that the teams that go to Kennedy, did something to earn it. So that's how we do that.
Darcy, can I stop you right there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've heard that the 5th grade kids cannot go to Kennedy Space Center.
I should actually have put that in the slides. Yes, we're going to not take the little guys to Kennedy. We did that last year. We took the really little guys, and it's just really challenging for us to do because we're actually not allowed to pay for their parents to travel. So at that point, it becomes a pretty big financial obligation for the families.
Right.
They don't want to send their kids.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. So we're looking, and we've been talking to the different hubs about some different ways that we can reward the younger students with something more local, but we'll make sure they get something fun too. Yeah.
Okay.
So the mission advisor also goes with the kids?
Yeah, the mission advisor also gets to go to Kennedy. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, yes, we wouldn't go without you. Yeah. And that's a lot of fun for the mission advisors too. Last year when we went, Kennedy's great. We did see a rocket launch. So if you've never seen it, that's amazing. And it's kind of I would like to say it's once in a lifetime, but some of us are lucky enough to see it multiple times. So it's pretty fun. And it's definitely something that could change the life of a student seeing something like that. All right, let's keep cruising. So these are slides specific to the hub events. They kind of speak for themselves. So I'm not going to go through each of these because these slides will be available for people to look at in more detail. Do we have anyone here that's going to the Texas Hub event? No, I don't think so. Texas is a little bit later. Again, you're going to get invited via email. And they, I think, have been pretty clear with the teams already in their region about who's getting travel support. Big thing is with all of these hubs, as far as I know, the university or the hub coordinator is actually going to book the room, the hotel room. If you wanted to book a room just to make sure you had one and then you could cancel it later, that's fine. But I expect for the actual university to book the rooms for you and your students if you're traveling and you need accommodations. Montana, okay, so some of you guys will be going to the Montana one. Camden Drager, he's great. I met him last week. He's our contact in Montana. I just sent him the list of teams that submitted by May 1st. So he'll be contacting those teams via email. Their event's going from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on May 19th. And lunch and dinner is going to be provided at the event and paid for. In terms of like who else can come, they're probably pretty flexible in terms of bringing additional family members, like within reason. But that if you have questions on that, that might be something good to ask Camden about because they might have to accommodate for that in terms of how much food they order or whatever. This is that they wrote in terms of travel support. They're providing teams with support if they're traveling over 150 miles. And then mileage support is going to be provided for all teams. So, and again, you'll get details from him about that.
Okay.
That's what I know. And again, hammer away with those guys with questions because they're the best people to ask. In Washington, Deanna Marshall is who's planning our event. And she's actually been out all month. So it's ironic. I don't really know so much more about my own event than I do about some of the other ones. But I do know it's going to be a little bit longer because I think we've got a banquet that's going to go a bit later in the evening. So 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We are providing lunch and dinner. Teams are going to be invited after the May 10th submission deadline. And we've got some dorm rooms that we can provide to students and mission advisors. And then we also have some hotel rooms that we can reserve as well. And CW will be booking those rooms directly. And we'll go ahead and provide mileage support for all teams. And again, if you're within 150 miles and you think that maybe you couldn't come without additional, like a hotel room or something like that, just email Deanna and we can see if it fits within our budget. Arizona, I'm going to skip this one because I think Anne has been in contact with these teams already. It's a bit of a unique event. And then Idaho, these ones are a little bit later and I didn't get all the details, but there's 2 in Idaho. Susan Stoffer is the contact for those and she's been talking with her teams. They're a little bit later, which is actually what I was hoping. I was hoping these events would happen in June, so we'd have a little bit more time between the deadline and when the events occurred. So she'll be in contact with the teams after May 10th. There will be, again, hotel rooms provided for teams traveling long distances and mileage support. And I think for her events, there will be lunch and dinner provided. Okay, so a little bit about the actual what happens at these events and what does this final challenge look like. Again, this is in the manual, but there are 4 main parts of the final challenge that students can participate in. I'll have a little workbook that will help them, each team, like track their results through each of these phases if they go to an in-person event. And I'm not going to talk about all of them. Launch phase is a pretty straightforward balloon activity, but I will talk about, and same thing with landing phase. That's supposed to be a surprise, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I can tell you that it's a hands-on engineering type activity that students don't need to prepare for at all. They can just do it on site. So I'll talk about the cruise phase and the surface navigation phase. Before I do that, I'm going to talk about virtual submissions. So a lot of teams, again, can't go to an in-person hub event. So they're going to be making a virtual submission, which means they're going to upload their MDL, which gives us information about which mission objectives their teams completed and what they did and how well they did on those. And then in terms of what's in mission objective 9, which is what this comes from, Okay, they're going to record the team going through each mission objective or each part of the phase, sorry. And then they're going to make a video and submit the video. So this is how we did it during COVID, basically. So they're going to be kind of still keeping in that COVID model. When you're doing this, like, you can make it as challenging or as exciting as you want for your students, but you don't need to go over the top. So they can use the materials that they've been working with and practicing with, especially in terms of their robot and their drone. If you already have a drone course that they've been practicing on, they can use that same drone course, right, to do their final submission video. Same thing if they've got a practice map that they've been driving their rover on, you don't need to print out a new one or provide a new one. Use what you have and just use that for the final submission, and that's great. We're not trying to create a bunch of extra work. Okay, so the cruise phase, this is the drone one, and there's different rules about what the students need to do depending on their age range. Okay, and again, this is all in, or at least hopefully most of it's in the manual. But youngest teams will fly Artemis 2, so that's what's going to hopefully happen in 2024 with real humans on the Orion. And that's basically a figure 8 around the moon. Okay, and teams are going to land and take off at the same location, which would be on the floor or on a table near the Earth globe. And, you know, even for the final challenge, whether you're doing a video or doing it in person, teams are going to be allowed to reset if they crash or if they don't execute the trajectory correctly. Grade 6 through 8, tends to be a little bit more confusing because the Artemis 2 trajectory is a little bit more confusing. This one, they'll leave the Earth, okay? Some teams, I think, have looked carefully at the trajectory and noticed that it does actually orbit the Earth once. At the final event, whether or not they do that, I'm not going to count because we didn't really explicitly say they had to do that. But they definitely do have to fly to the moon in that same figure 8 type trajectory. So not just going straight there, but going to the other side of the moon. Go into a polar orbit, okay, which I think is really interesting and cool. They'll do at least 3 orbits before landing at the gateway, which is the name of the lunar station that's going to orbit the moon. So that will be a spot on the floor or on a table that is near the moon globe, okay? And teams can, in middle school, can reset up to 5 times. And if you're in high school, hopefully your motor skills are a little bit better and you can only get to reset 3 times. Okay, so biggest questions I get, teams do not have to land on the moon or the Earth. In fact, I think landing the drone on the moon or the Earth, those inflatable balls would be pretty challenging. Teams don't need to like really worry about being the correct distance from the Earth or the moon, like looking carefully at the trajectory and scaling it out. It's really just more about being able to fly the pattern or the general shape of the trajectory. At the in-person hub, the globes will be about 15 feet apart and about 5 feet above the ground. And the start and the end targets will be printed out. So they're kind of cute little printouts that we made. And again, if you're doing this virtually, if 15 feet apart is too far, just put them whatever works for your particular learning environment. And if you need to fly outside, that's fine too. If you need to fly around other objects that aren't the inflatable Earth and the moon, that's fine too. Just figure out a way to make it work where we can actually see them in that trajectory.
Can you hear me, Darcy?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I was just wondering, you know, I've got to ask all these questions.
Yep.
When you said they could reset, do they start all over or do they reset where they crashed?
That is a really good question. It says, I think they reset. So for the younger guys, I think they do have to reset back at low Earth orbit. So at that place on the floor. And then if you're in middle school or high school and you crash when you're actually orbiting the moon, you can reset at the gateway. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's actually that's in the manual.
I don't know how I'm missing these kind of things because I've read it so often. Maybe it's too much and I'm skipping over stuff. I don't know.
Well, it's possible that I don't know. I feel the same way. Don't worry. Because sometimes I forget what's in there. Yeah. But that's what it will be. So for the young kids, they do have to reset back at the Earth. And then the older kids, assuming they get to the moon, they can reset back at the moon. Okay. Any other questions on the drone bit? No. Okay. The next part, I guess I put this in an awkward spot. So this is the there will be, if you're in an in-person event, there will be a station where teams present some things from their MDL. And this list is in the manual, and it's a suggested list of what they can present from their MDL. So if you're looking at this list and thinking my team didn't do all these mission objectives, that's fine. Just have them present the ones that they did do. What they can bring, they don't need to bring a slideshow necessarily, but if they want to bring some visuals, like a printout of a picture of their life in a closed system experiment, or a picture of their mission patch, so they have something that they can talk through, they can bring whatever they feel like they need to bring in order to make it a good presentation. And again, this is the idea that we've got, people that are preparing for a mission, and they have to prove to NASA that they've done the right preparation to go. They've done the work and they're ready to go. So they're making that presentation to us, proving that they did the work by completing these other mission objectives, and that they're ready to go. Okay. But of course, they need to think a little bit carefully about how they present it in the amount of time they'll be given. And I think I've got a slide at the end here that talks about time, but I think for the in-person events, they'll have 15 minutes to present this information, and they don't have to use all 15 if that's too long for them. The lunar dust course, this one is pretty straightforward. We're just going to have a bed of, we'll actually have at the in-person events, the lunar regolith that we sent to you. We have enough of it to fill out this dust course. So it's going to be 36 inches long, which is longer than the practice course that we asked you guys to build in MO7. And that's just because if we've got a really, well-performing robot, let's see how far it can go. Let's really test it. So that's been some confusing for some teams, but don't feel like you have to go back to your classroom and build a longer course. If they practiced on an 18-inch long course, that's enough to prove that they've got a robot that is designed to drive on the lunar regolith. And if you are submitting virtually, again, don't feel like you have to build another course. Just use whatever your team prepared to make it so they can test whether their robot can drive on this stuff. Use that same course in your final submission video. And that should be filled with everyday material, whatever you thought was appropriate, or whatever your team determined was appropriate, because you're not going to have enough of this lunar regolith simulant to fill up your course. Another big question, teams can change their robots. They can change the wheels. They can, put sensors on or remove sensors. They can change other components about their robots before attempting the crater map. So their designs can be totally different. That's fine. And in fact, they probably will need to change at least their wheels if they had put some strange wheels on it for the regolith course. Let's see. The crater course here, again, all the information is posted on the online resource guide. We've got some questions. So there are some frequently asked questions. I put those in the facts, which is also in the resource guide that's online. Biggest thing is that teams don't have to have a printed map. So they don't have to have a colored map that looks exactly like this one that you've printed out. They can create their own map using the coordinates. And that's especially true for teams that are submitting virtually. So whatever map they created to, figure out how to program their robot, that's fine. The map that we have here is going to be printed and provided at the final challenge event. So if you are going to an in-person event, you don't have to bring the map that your team made. We'll have a map there. So there's different things the teams are going to have to do for this one. So first, they're going to have to, that's not the best title of a slide, but for this course, they're going to have to make a ramp selection. So the engineering challenge for this particular roads thing was, how do I make a robot that can go up a really steep slope? So in theory, they designed the robot to do that. They tested it in mission objective 7 to figure out how steep of a slope it can go up. And now when they go to the in-person hub event, they should have a good understanding of the robot. So we are going to say, we've got these 4 different ramps. These are the angles of the ramps. You should tell me, based on your robot, which ramp you want us to put on the course. And you should pick the steepest one that you think your robot can climb up. So they're going to tell us what ramp to put on the course. It's going to be lined up, the edge of it here, right here where it says finish ramp. Okay. And then, they'll execute that part of the challenge with that ramp. If your team is submitting virtually, just use the ramp they developed to complete MO7. If you have an adjustable ramp, you can have your team make the finished ramp as steep of an angle as possible when they're making their video, and just let us know like how steep of a ramp did you use in that final challenge course. The color sensing, the rules with that are all teams should try to measure at least 2 colors in the color sensing regions, which are these white areas. We're going to put a circle over the white areas that is a specific color. It will either be red, green, blue, or yellow. Okay, so that kind of limits what they have to program into their robot. And the rover should be able to determine which color it is automatically. So I'm not going to tell you now which color each sensing region is going to be. Their robot should be ready no matter what color it is. They've got everything programmed in to sense any of those colors. And then the sample collection. So this is just for the older students, 6 through 12. And we're only asking them to try to collect one sample, at least one sample. Okay, they can push it, they can pick it up. They should just attempt to carry it with them so there is no like deposit area on the map. And they should try to push it up the ramp, but if they can't push it up the ramp, that's okay. We're gonna provide a 1-inch by 1-inch Lego block at the events as a potential sample that they can pick up or push. But if the teams wanna bring their own samples that they've been practicing with, they can do that and we'll put those on the map, okay? And again, if teams really wanna show off and impress, they can try to collect all the samples, but we're really, again, to keep this challenge leveled so students that are brand new can participate and students that have a lot of experience can participate and everybody can be challenged. We're really only, the minimum is just picking up one sample to start. This is not, it'll look a little prettier than this, but this just to give you guys an idea. We're gonna cover the ramps with black gaffer tape, which is I guess a theater thing. It's pretty tacky, so they should have good friction on the ramps and they'll be black. And then we're gonna put a smooth transition here, okay, because that's a question we get a lot. Time limits. Okay, so the cruise phase, that's 8 minutes. That's the part with the drones. So teams should be ready to complete the drone portion at the in-person events in 8 minutes. They'll have 15 minutes for the rover portion, okay? And then 15 minutes to present their MDL. The launch and landing portions, those are kind of fillers for the rest of the time. They don't have time limits, but they could take 30 to 45 minutes because students are actually building something from scratch on that one. And there will be other activities at the hub events as well. And then the videos submitted by virtual teams should be less than 12 minutes. Okay, last slide. Thank you guys. I guess there's one more, but this is the last real slide. So a lot of people wonder about what to do with supplies after the challenge is done. So a lot of you guys have NSBE bought supplies. And I just want to remind you guys of NSBE's goal. Our goal really is to support educators and students with supplies. So people that are participating in our programs, we want to make sure that it's not prohibitive because you guys don't have the materials at your school. Okay. So we're happy to continue to loan you those supplies as long as you or your school, maybe another teacher at your school, plans to participate in an NSBE program. Okay, so if you think like that was fun, that was a good experience, I think I'd like to do some part of Roads next year, just keep the supplies that we sent you, okay? And we'll know that you have them, you're on a list somewhere on our side too, okay? On the other hand, if you're like, that was not for me, or I'm busy, I'm gonna retire, right? And I don't think anyone else wants to do it. In that case, we do ask you send the robot and drone back to NSBE. The other materials, we don't need back, the consumable stuff. And the reason why we ask you to send them back is that rather than having them sit on a shelf somewhere in a school and not get used, like if you send them back to us, I guarantee you we will send them out to another educator and they will get used by students. So we're constantly shipping supplies in and out, okay? So this is what NSBE calls a long-term loan. So again, and a lot of you guys, some of you are here, right, have EV3s that you've had forever from NSBE, and that's fine. So that's what the rules are about the supplies. So, and you don't have to decide right away. But again, if it comes around for Roads time next year, you're getting emails from us and you're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. That's when it would be great to send the supplies back so we can send them out to another team. All right, so that's all I have for the slides, just reminding about how you can get additional support. At this point, we're getting pretty close to the end of the challenge, so there's no more office hours, but there still are some videos online that might be useful. And of course, you can always email us. Okay. long presentation, story of my life. So does anyone here have questions? I feel like you guys are the folks that show up for a lot of stuff. So hopefully not too many, but no?
I don't think so. I think if I get sent everything, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, and another word on supplies, like, yeah, the point is not also that you only use the supplies for Nesby stuff. So if you have a bunch of robots, use them for whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, like use, and if somebody else needs to use them, like loan them to that person and let that other teacher use them. So,
Perfect.
yeah,
So
if this is how we get supplies in schools, how it has to be. Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
I'm imagining when we get to the hub event, we'll register somewhere and then we'll get some kind of like document or something to tell us what we're doing first, second, third, and when and where.
Yeah, and that might actually, I would be surprised if Deanna didn't send that information before the event. Yeah.
That would be nice. If I could just tell my group that much, I think they'll feel fine.
Me
Because
too.
what do we do? What do we do when we get there? It's like, I'll ask, but this is how it usually goes with these kinds of things. So, okay.
Yeah, I think we're all. It's kind of fun. I'll be really interested to get feedback from educators after these in-person events. I think we're all kind of recovering from COVID still. I feel like maybe it's
Yes, for sure.
it's hard for us to imagine what these big events are, and there's a lot of nerves around like not knowing how many people are going to be there. So if we knew it was going to be, 100 people, then I think we'd have the exact agenda for you today. But because there's so much uncertainty about how many folks are going to come to the events, there's a little bit of uncertainty on the agenda. So yeah, next year we're going to put more time between the final submission and when these events occur. More than 9 days for Montana, for example, like that's just not enough time. So
Okay.
yeah.
I have one question. Like, I'm in Washington, but I'm just wondering. Hello. I have.
Yeah,
one-
I can hear.
I'm in Washington, and I was wondering, like, we have a hub event on 3rd June.
Uh-huh.
We are going to plan in case we if there's any other date for the other hub events that happening around US. Is it possible to reach out to the coordinators there to arrange?
Like to attend a different hub event?
Yes.
Where are you guys located in Washington?
I'm near Seattle.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at that point, your only option really would be go to the Idaho hub events, and you could do that. The Moscow one. I mean, it's not as close to you guys, but yeah, that would be a possibility for sure. So that one, if you would want to go to a different hub event, not the Washington one, I would email both the Washington hub coordinator and the Idaho one, and just let them know. Yeah.
So Idaho, when is that one?
There's two actually in Idaho. The one you would go to would be probably the one in Moscow, Idaho. That's in northern Idaho, and it's on the 17th of June.
17th of June.
Yeah. Boise, Idaho, that'd be really far. You'd probably almost be easier to fly at some point. Yeah.
And that is so if I understand, the hub events, they cover the accommodation but not the fly, right?
Yeah, and especially if
Mhm.
there's a closer hub event, I think that, yeah,
Okay.
you probably wouldn't be purchasing airline tickets.
Yes. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, I mean, we are going to try our best if the team can make it on 3rd one. Otherwise, we'll check with the other hub event coordinators.
Okay. That sounds good. Is that there's just maybe a conflict on June 3rd, you're thinking?
Yeah, few of the kids, they are interested, but they are not sure if they can make it right now
Okay.
at this point. So we were just talking about it, like whether we should do virtual or should the whole team go there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But that's an option for sure if you wanted to go to the Idaho one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Well, thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yes.
Free
Thanks.
to sign
Bye.
off if you are done. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Good to see you.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you,
very
Diane.
much.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Alrighty. Let's see.